Right, we're going to take a look at how to change this fur color. I'm outside, so we should have good natural lighting. It's not a super bright sunny day, but it is daytime, so we've got some good flat lighting. I think the video is doing a pretty good job of showing what this actually looks like. As a first step, we're going to use masking tape and mask off all of the parts of the coat that aren't this panel of fur. There are 3 main panels. We're going to do them one at a time. First, let's just brush any fur out of the way that's overlapping so it doesn't get caught underneath the tape. I'm just using regular masking tape for this. It sticks to the cloth well enough, but it's not going to be hard to peel off. You can see that I've now taped off the entire panel so that only the fur is exposed. Now let's look at our supplies that we'll need for the dye. I have a little spritz bottle, some 91% isopropyl alcohol. That's just rubbing alcohol. You can find this at most grocery stores or pharmacy stores. Can't remember the word for pharmacy. We then have the Ranger brand alcohol ink. Try and get my phone to focus on it. There we go. So Ranger brand. It's also got this Jim Holtz. I can't really tell what that says. It's part of the branding as well. So there's one set that comes with all 3 of these colors. And these colors are watermelon, citrus, and sailboat blue. So we're going to be using these, and the reason we're also going to use the alcohol is because if we use the inks by themselves, they're a little bit too powerful, and so we're going to dilute it with the alcohol so we don't accidentally over dye the fur. So to start off, I think this bottle holds about 3 ounces total, and I've got it just a little bit more than halfway full at this point. So I have 1.5 to 2 ounces of the rubbing alcohol in here. Now let's add our dye. These bottles drip out pretty nicely for the most part, so it's easy to count drops. I'm going to put in about 20 drops of the watermelon color. There we go, a nice watermelon colored alcohol. Now I'll add about 30 drops of our citrus green. And that was the cap rolling off the table. Just put this lid on to shake this up. So we've now mixed up a sort of reddish brownish color in here, which is pretty close to the color the fur already is, but that's not what we want. And I'll add about 20 drops of the blue. Sorry, bumped the camera with my arm. Alright, now what we have kind of looks like swamp water. It's pretty gross. Let's do a test. Let's spray this out onto a piece of paper and see what color it is. Sure, that was very exciting for you listening to me grab a piece of paper. Couple sprays to get it going. So most of what you can see on the paper right here is just because it's still saturated with the alcohol. So we have to wait for it to dry for a second. So now our spray has dried on the paper, and you can see how subtle of a color it is. You can barely see the spray marks on this paper. That's why we dilute it with the rubbing alcohol, is so it only puts on a little bit of color at once. Now, I'm not sure how well it's showing up on camera. I know the color the color change that the camera does automatically is probably turning the paper a little bit blue, and it's not great at grabbing the true color of the paper. Hoping by putting this blue bottle in frame it will adapt the color more accurately. So you can see it a little bit, and it's a slightly tan color. I'm going to try adding just a little bit more green and a little bit more blue to our mixture to see if we can get just a slightly darker, more mushroom color to it. So before we had 20 drops of red, we had 30 drops of green, and we had 20 drops of blue. Let's add 5 more drops of blue and 10 more drops of green. The green is not as strong as the other colors, which is why I use more of it. And you may be thinking, hey, why didn't you figure out a perfect ratio before you started filming? Well, I didn't measure exactly how much alcohol to put in, and that makes a bit of a difference in how much color to use. Plus, it's kind of variable. If you like the color a little bit greener or a little bit grayer or a little bit bluer, you can tinker with the amount of alcohol ink that you put in. That looks pretty good to me. I think that's about the color I got before, and I like how it turns out. Let's just let that dry. Alright, here you go. That's our newest spray, which is dried onto the paper. The blue bottle is just in frame to try and help the white stay nice and white instead of blue. And as you can see, it's still really subtle. I can bring it closer to the camera, but I think it just kind of disappears when I do that. Let's try it. And my camera can't even really focus on it that close. There's a slight color difference. It's pretty mild. But I think I like that color, so let's see what happens if we start applying this color onto our fur. Alright, we have our fur, we have our mixed up alcohol with the alcohol inks in it. In the end, we had 20 drops of the watermelon, we had 40 drops of the citrus green, and 25 drops of the sailboat blue. And that was in this container, approximately 60% full. I'll look and see what the total volume of this container is, and I'll write in a comment of how many milliliters and ounces that should be. But let's try applying that to our fur just out of the spray bottle. As I go over it with my hand here, it helps get the alcohol down into all of the fibers of the fur, and it also helps fold over some of the fibers so that they're more exposed for additional spraying. I do recommend wearing a glove while you do this, because otherwise you're going to stain your fingers a little bit. It does come off, of course, but it's nicer if you don't have to worry about it. Now, of course, this still needs to dry completely before you can see the color it truly is, but you can already see the difference between the area that has been sprayed and the part that has not. There's a pretty significant color change there. Just to speed things up a little bit, I'm going to hit this with a hairdryer. Or at least I would if my hairdryer were working. Hang on. Got it. This is not necessary. You can just wait for it to dry. That will work just fine. This is just a little bit faster. Our fur is dry, let's remove the tape. There you have it. You can now see the difference in the color. Once again, I'm not sure how well my camera is capturing that. The difference is actually considerably, not considerably, but the difference is definitely more noticeable in person. It really has taken away some of the color. This still looks more red on my camera screen than it does in real life. And then, of course, if you take the tape off, if you let it dry and you still wish it were more of a different color, you can just keep spraying on the same alcohol solution. If you want to try and strip out a little bit more of the orange, you can add just a little bit more of the blue, and that will give you a little bit more of a gray tint to your fur. I hope this tutorial is helpful in changing this fur and any other fur you may have.